You didn't say. Excuse me. I'm gonna make faces. Hello, welcome back to LadyT. Let's talk about it. Thank you guys for coming back. It's a very humbling experience, this whole thing. Today, as you've seen, is about anxiety and depression. Okay, we're talking about mental health. And I have my two panelists, two amazing men. Okay, I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves.
Me first?
Yeah,
you go
first. I am Jocelyn. I work in public education in Washington, D.C. I am in my 10th year of being a public educator in the nation's capital, working with the most loved children in the country. I am honored to be here.
Thank you for being here. If y'all don't know, he's been a part of LadyT. Let's talk about it without even being on the camera. So today is his camera debut.
It's a debut.
It's a debut. All right, so I'm going to go to my left now.
My name is Reggie Lockhart. I'm currently a resident for the state of Virginia in counseling. For the past 10 years, I've been working within counseling, working with DC jail, Stafford Court, working with youth that have been caught with drugs and alcohol. I've done that, and also too, I do counseling. My primary thing is CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Do that and talk therapy, and also too, 35 years in ministry and counseling in that area too, as it relates to marriage.
Okay, good stuff.
Thank you, Chancellor, for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming, sitting at my table, talking with me, talking with the people. You say too? Listen, Jesus. God's still working on me. So
I'm a Christian too. I'm a Christian too.
All right, so I want to start by even defining anxiety and depression. I'm going to talk to you, Mr. Reggie. What is the definition of anxiety or depression?
Well, when you talk about, first thing to know about anxiety and depression is that everybody, it's a normal trait that everyone has.
Okay.
You know, even, and I kid my family and everything, when Dallas plays a game and everything, I have some anxiety, right? Of course, when they lose the game, I have some depression, but that's not considered clinical,
right?
Or that's not considered clinical depression or clinical anxiety. Anxiety and depression appears, the manual and National Institutes of Health said if you have it 6 months or more, then that's considered clinical depression or anxiety.
Okay.
Right. And so
I didn't know that.
If we say depression, so your sadness, your weight that you're held down, you feel you can't go to work and all these different symptoms and everything. If they happen in a period over 6 months, then that's considered clinical depression. That's one of the measurements.
Okay. So what, and I know you just kind of touched on it a little bit, not being able to go to work and all that kind of stuff. What are some of I guess we could start with anxiety first, because I feel like it leads into depression most of the time. What are the symptoms of anxiety?
Anxiety, some of the symptoms is restlessness, feeling kind of wound up, easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating. But I want you to know that anxiety is a part of our life, because when we go to work and you feel anxiety, right, and people will mistake that as, I have anxiety, right? But it's not. You're just going to work, and it's just a little anxiety there. So, so some of the other things is irritability, muscle tension, and everything. And then there are different types of anxiety. There's social disorder anxiety, general anxiety disorder, and then there's panic disorder, which is the most familiar one. Is where you get the panic attacks.
Okay, absolutely. And I'm going to turn to my educator. Have you seen, especially in the millennial generation and below, because I don't feel like these teens are millennials, but how do you see it manifesting itself in the ways that your dad was just talking about?
Definitely. I currently work in a middle school. I've been in middle school working with 11 to 14, a few 16-year-olds, for the last 3 years. But prior to that, I was in high school. We see anxiety on a regular basis in kids, and anxiety in kids looks a lot like what it looks like in adults. They just flip out a little bit better, right? So they have the opportunity to lose less if they act out than adults do. Adults can lose their jobs. Yeah, adults can lose their families. Adults can get divorced. They can get locked up. You can get in an argument. Somebody press charges. You know what I'm saying? Right. Kids don't really have that issue. However, they still have the same feelings that we experience as adults. And that anxiety shows up in them refusing to follow instructions or tears. I get a lot of tears in middle school. Lots of crying. Lots of things that kids want to talk about. They come up to you, I want to talk, and then don't know what to say or are unable to articulate the issues that they have. Okay. As far as millennials is concerned, I see the same thing in my mentees and friends who are in their late teens, early 20s, that constant worrying over what's going to happen, what's going to happen. Oops, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to do anything. I am overwhelmed. I'm just so done. You hear that? Yeah. That kind of thing. And that is anxiety. But I guess, and I don't know, Dad, if you could talk. For those, that's my daddy, if y'all didn't know that. I was going to try to say Reggie. It's not going to come out right. But like that, when you talk about anxiety and depression, people usually wrap them together. And I know we were talking on the way here about the fact that they are two very different things, even though they lean on each other. Right. You can't have one without the other, but they lean on each other, making both bigger.
In the counseling, in the counseling industry or psychology industry, right? They would be known as comorbid together. Okay. You know, for instance, a person that has anxiety disorder, say has a phobia of snakes or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So of course, if they see a snake, okay, the anxiety would come up. But also, too, they may not go to the park, which they love to go, because they fear of snakes, and so that causes the depression. Right.
And I definitely think I can relate to that. I know for me, when I feel like the word anxiety and depression came about in my life was college. Right. And that's when that is the best time of your life, but it's also kind of the worst in a way, because you're in between adulting and being a child, whereas, you got to worry about housing and if you can pay for this and classes and personalities and stuff like that. And I know for me, I've ran almost every single organization on Morgan State's campus, and I could be in a room with a whole lot of people and felt alone. So I was like, that's that depression kind of creeping in type thing. And then even with anxiety, what you were saying, Jocelyn. I'm working on first name basis.
Oh my God.
So what you were saying about, being overwhelmed and stuff like that. For me, when I get overwhelmed, when I have too many deadlines or too many things that I feel, I don't know, I get overwhelmed. And being able to articulate how I'm feeling, I started to feel like the only way I could explain it was that like a cloud was in my chest type thing. And it was a tight feeling.
Well, let's work with that, Tyler. So if you have an anxiety disorder, right, what makes it certain objects in certain situations, you feel a fear and dread. So when you come up to a test or what you're going through, you felt something, right? So that probably was some anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. The thing is how do you respond to the situation?
I drop everything.
You drop everything.
And then that leads into the depression because I'm not doing
Right.
what I'm supposed to be
But
doing.
when you drop everything, right, do you feel a panic attack? Do you feel you have suicidal thoughts? Do you have those things, right?
So I think, and I've told Lady T, let's talk about it, that it's raw and uncut. I would say suicide has not been a thought because I'm understanding what it is, and I think knowing your triggers is a big thing as well.
Yes.
And I am, most of my stuff is emotionally triggered.
Okay.
So, and I was talking to some of my peers and I was just saying, they said, well, what is your trigger? I said, the unknown. Especially emotionally, the unknown will get the heck out of me. And then one of my friends was like, well, what the heck is the unknown? And I was like, dang, like, what is the unknown? So why am I tripping over that? But I know it can lead to suicidal thoughts. I've done better with that type of stuff. And not as much like, because I feel like, especially with the suicidal thoughts, that's a touchy subject in a way. Mine was more so like, God, if a car hit me today, I'd be okay. Just because it was so overwhelming. But, as having strong people around me, I've been told to press, and you really do have to work through that type of stuff.
Now it can be anxiety can be diagnosed if you have one of these three things: has an inappropriate response to a situation, cannot control the response, or has altered the way you do life.
Mine is more of the response.
Okay.
When you were talking about.
Now, some people use sex as a release. As we talk about adults and adulting and everything like that.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Don't poke you in the poke hole.
Did you say
sex?
Sex is for anxiety? What? So you use sex to do what exactly?
Sex to release, sex to settle yourself down. Some people self-medicate. Some people use drugs.
There's a solution.
I mean,
you get a little worried, get a little nervous. Go get yourself, and then you go.
But
somebody write that down.
The only problem with that is that sex is not sustaining. It doesn't last. So you find yourself trying to do it over and over and over again. And then other things come involved with that.
Right.
Communicable diseases, AIDS, and all that.
But babies.
That is baby.
Children.
Them is sustainable. them keep coming. Here's the thing. With any of the solutions that you would have to these things, to anxiety, depression, or these issues that come up, there are none of the solutions that we are used to are sustainable. Like you talk about, anxiety leads people to do, alcohol, drugs, all of those kinds of things. None of those solutions are sustainable, which is why I personally think that, especially for the millennial generation, this issue of emotional triggers and anxiety and depression is such a vicious cycle and a perfect trick of the enemy, if you will. Of course, I'm going to bring in the spiritual aspect, I suppose.
Come on.
I feel like it's a vicious cycle because there is no solution to that, because the issue is faith. You have this, like the example that you used, Tanler, you say you're in a room full of people, but you feel by yourself because they're in a college campus, especially in our culture. You get dressed, you got your best outfit on, you have prepared for a couple of hours together. You are projecting something that you are not really. Do you know what I'm saying?
That was definitely trying to dress better than you feel.
Right. Never look like you feel. I was taught that in a class one time. That was part of your makeup and getting ready for the world, presenting your best self. You present who you want to be, not necessarily where you are, because where you are may be less than where you're trying to get to, right? So it's very logical, but in this aspect of life, it's not real.
Yeah.
And you can't build relationships with fake people. You walk into a room and you hug everybody, you kiss on the cheek and all of that, and then you stand and you get something to drink and it's like, okay, I made it. What I'm gonna do now? Yeah. And that is that anxiety based off the fact that you're not necessarily being your authentic self. So when I talk to kids and when I talk to people, I am always talking about being authentic, acknowledging who you are, what you are in the moment, and it's okay. I ask kids all the time, at what age do you intend to die?
Mm-hmm.
And they be like, what? Why would you ask me that?
Mhm.
I asked y'all that on Friday. What age do you intend to die? Well, I'm gonna die. I'm at least be 80. You're gonna be 80.
Mm.
And right now, sitting in front of me, you're 12 or you're 20. That means you got a good 60 years
Mhm.
to do a whole lot of things. Take some of that pressure off so that you be okay being you where you are. We put too much pressure on ourselves.
But Josh, the other thing too is we got to understand that 40 million people in America suffer from anxiety. So we have to know that this is not. You don't feel unusual that you stand out or anything. You got 40 million people across, and we know from studies that women suffer. Or there are more women that suffer from anxiety than men because of their everyday problems through a menstrual cycle, menstrual periods.
We
and
emotional.
Like that, right?
I mean, we need some pampering.
But let's not disregard the fact that men suffer too.
Men suffer too.
And I find that working with kids and working with adults, part of the difficulty that we have with our males that go through is that they're harder to crack than some of the girls, because a female is expected to be emotional. So you can, you work through that. But when you're dealing with a guy who has got these deep issues, part of the issue is they feel bad because they got the issue. Right. And they stressed because they don't, you know what I'm saying? They don't want to share that.
So with that, because I completely agree. How does anxiety and or depression kind of manifest itself within men? Because with a woman, you break down, you cry, or your demeanor is different. But with men, especially my African American kings, I just feel like they have so much. Okay,
say it again.
African American
kings.
King, if you watching out there, I'm available.
Let me get my chat. Bozeman closed.
That's it.
Okay, a man who found a wife.
Oh,
That's a good thing.
Goodness.
I'm here. But I'm here. See, you just gotta make yourself available. But
yes,
I don't know. But to the question, my African American kings, they tend to. I mean, and I guess this could go for men of all race and ages and stuff like that. They have so much on their shoulders. So, just like you said, you're supposed to be this strong man. You're supposed to take care of this family. You're supposed to, move out the house at this. I feel like men deal with I mean, not saying that women don't, but men deal with a lot of stuff. And
to your question, right? We were with First Baptist Glenarden and with Dr. Johnson.
Johnny Parker,
right? And he talked about, which I thought was great, right? That we have a backstage life and then we have the public life. And so what happens is that we tend to talk about what we do, what our accomplishments is, but we never talk about who we are. And that stems from the way we were taught and all the myths that we had coming up, like all men love to have sex, all men should not cry, all men should not have feelings. So we get all of these things, right? That so from the neck down to the waist, right? We're taught to not to have those feelings in the heart, the stomach, these feelings and everything. So what happens is that men tend to think with their head and with their penis.
Okay. Well,
and so if we can't find anything,
they're not gonna let you on the show.
Right. So what happens is that if we can't, if this is not working, our penis is not working, we're trying to find something to put in our head to make that work.
I think you asked how do these things manifest in guys. What you find is that a lot of men are more comfortable with being angry or being silent.
Right.
And so often what will happen is you have what I say all the time, a misproportionate response to a situation. Right. So you got somebody might have done something wrong, and everybody's like, oh yeah, they was wrong for that, but you got a brother that has gone to 1,000 and they are turning tables and ready to go. And you're like, you come, whoa.
Right.
It's like, yo, like, wait a minute, we mad, but we not ready to blow it up yet,
Right.
But you will get that kind of response from a young man who is going through some sort of depression or anxiety, or even if they're hurt about something, if something bothers them, instead of it being like, oh, I just, that was rough, they are all the way down. Like, they go from being, mellow and partially upset to being like incapacitated with sadness and the inability to move forward, or they can't let go of something. Anytime you talk to somebody and it's like the 20th time that you done had the same conversation, they tell you that same story over and over again. They pause and they say, like, you can almost say it with them. This is somebody that's really, they just not quite at the level where they need to be. You know what I mean?
But also, if you continue in life but not expressing your feelings and not going to your backstage exactly who you are, what happens is when trauma comes or when a situation happens, right, you tend to not express your feelings. So that tends to point you in the area of anxiety. That's how anxiety and depression develops, because we're not expressing ourselves. Also, too, for any mental health, right, you want to exercise, you want to educate yourself, you want to yoga, move music. All these things are great for you to help settle you down, to keep you, and also to get mental health. See the therapist. There's nothing wrong seeing the therapist. It's not a bad thing. Mental health is curable. I'm gonna say that again. Mental health is curable.
People don't believe that.
But there's a lot of stacks. You said a lot of stigma about mental health. I'm sorry.
That's okay. 50's fingers. Facebook Live. We're just, hey, 50's fingers. We gotta welcome back Instagram Live. We lost it for a minute, but we back.
Okay. So,
I feel like I'm on the radio.
So
can we take questions?
We can. So that's why we have the live situation going on. So
great.
We can have people interacting, like media check right now.
Am I gonna hear their voice or something? You're
not gonna hear their voice. We're just gonna shout them out. We got hey Brenda, Brenika. It's one of my college. One of our college students. I would definitely love for you to chime in on this conversation as we're talking about anxiety and depression and how it manifests itself. Right now, we're talking about how it manifests itself in men. So
Carmen Monique Porter.
You know her.
Hello,
Erica Davis.
Good evening,
Dorothy Locker. I know that.
You know what?
Listen, you better be careful. She got a husband. He the husband.
He the husband.
Y'all so silly. No, but definitely interact with us, Facebook and Instagram Live, as we talk about depression and anxiety. And if you feel comfortable enough, definitely share, any of your stories that you feel like is relatable or relevant to this conversation. As we were talking about anxiety and depression in men, why do you think it's so overlooked?
In men?
In men. We don't talk about anxiety and depression in men.
Well, depression because you're sad, because you stay home, or because you feel gloomy and everything, it's often looked in the work area as being lazy. Even in the household, it's looked at being lazy, right? But it's not. It's a weight. It's something that you carry. And depression can be biological. It can come down to the family. It can come. It could be learned behavior. It's just so many areas.
No, absolutely.
I don't think it's necessarily overlooked. I just think it's not talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that if you and I've experienced this recently, you get a group of guys together and you actually get the conversation going, you're gonna get somewhere. But it's a fraternal type conversation. Ain't nobody gonna tell you when that conversation happened. Ain't nobody gonna tell you they was in that conversation. And your beautiful self will not be there. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really one of those things. It's kind of a catch-22. Men need to be surrounded by men, right?
Yeah.
And need those connections so that you can get it out. But I do know that when surrounded by the right people, it'll start to come out. And people and the brothers will address it, but it's not necessarily. I don't think it's something that's overlooked. I think that men know about it; they just don't necessarily talk as loudly about it.
Right, and Jocelyn, that's true, because when I'm at the facility in DC with the jail, I have about 19 guys, 16 guys, and we sit down and talk about depression, and it's amazing. But if a female got into that same spot, the conversation would change.
It would
because of.
But like to that, do you think guys talk to each other? You know, because it's a whole. I feel like, and I've been a woman all my life, all 23 years, so I'm not sure about this. But,
you don't say.
I got all the body parts to prove it. But, but do you think that guys pull it out of each other in a way? So, like, when girls get together, you know, you get us a little wine and we start to talk about, like, girl, this happened and I'm feeling this way. Like, does it come out in a guy conversation? Because I know I have a friend who, you know, he's seen one way, but after talking, you know, after me and him were talking, I don't know if it's the nurturing of a woman that, you know, we want guys to be vulnerable and stuff like that. So I don't know if that broke him open to talk about it. And he was just kind of like, I've lost faith in myself type thing. And then we really started talking about his feelings, but I didn't know if, you know, what you were saying, how when guys get together, the key
to that is that you have to be, and I would encourage any young man watching, the key to it is making sure that you got guys around you who are going to be that way, who are going to allow that. Again, if we go back to what we project versus who we are, if you're the star, you know, and you that dude, and you only hang with people who see you as that dude, it's quite likely that you will not necessarily express all of these deeply rooted issues. You know what I'm saying? However, if you have a well-balanced circle, and you have if you have a circle in which you can, you know, you got people who are ahead of you, not necessarily older, because it's not necessarily always about being older, but
just in life,
people who are ahead of you as far as their mental status, as far as their thinking and how they act and how they're responding to the world, more than likely is going to come out. Because I mean, the guys I hang with, I feel like it's a balance. They pull on me, I pull on them, kind of thing. And if somebody's
and that's how it
not
should
right,
be, right? Like,
right.
I mean, and that's about, I think, you know, being evenly yoked and stuff like that. Like, you can be in the same mindset, but you have to want to get better. And I feel like, especially for millennials, you have to be evenly yoked with each other in the sense of, you know, if I'm down and you're up today, you pull me up. And then when I'm up and you're down, like, and that's how you keep growing together. And, you know,
I think we also have to look at what the age group we're talking about. We're talking about millennials. We're talking about the between the 40s and 50s. And then what they call me at work is centennials. Centennial. Right. Is that we have to understand that depend on the logic of what you grew up in.
Yeah.
And I think the millennials are more communicators than but better communicators than what we were because of what we were taught and what was instilled in us.
And they've had more practice.
Yeah.
They've been communicating, they've been chatting, they've been texting.
But I don't think we chat about that type stuff because I don't think we know, you know, we know what to, I don't think we communicate about that stuff. Because I don't think we know, like, especially, you know, for a guy, for a girl. Because I know, I'm telling you, up until I graduated from college, I didn't talk about this stuff. And I felt not convicted for feeling this way, but, you know, I was in my college apartment where, you know, you were no longer in a dorm living with somebody else. You had your own room. Like, we had an apartment, but we had our own room. And I won't forget going to my room, sitting down on my bed, you know, even talking to my mom, I just break down crying. But I'm in my own room in that little box, you know, and that's what I felt like. And I wasn't talking to anybody about it. And it wasn't until and it took a while for me to actually talk to my mom about it, to say, Mom, like, I don't know what this feeling is. I go to my meetings, I go to all my events, and just like you said, I have this persona on, I'm dressed to the T.
Right.
You know, I'm laughing, I'm giggling, and then when I get back to my room, this is the feeling that I have.
Gotcha.
And she just told me it's suppressed, but I didn't talk to my friends about it, and I didn't talk to other youth about it just because, you know, it was just kind of like, nobody gets it. But I think that goes to what you were saying about the persona that we all have when we're out in the open, in the public, but you never know who's feeling the exact same way, going through the exact same thing. And I think the millennial generation we're not prepared to deal with this stuff. Because I know at first, my mom used to say, you just don't know how to manage your emotions. Because I was like, Mommy, I'm depressed. I got anxiety. I'm this, I'm that. But it was just a matter of we're not equipped to deal with our emotions and those triggers. And like I said, and I think it's important to have panels like this, especially in colleges and schools, as young as schools.
It's extremely important to talk about it.
Yes.
It's extremely important to talk about it.
I need to laugh about mine.
Part of the difficulty, and I think, again, I'm going to read the scripture in just a second. I think that part of the danger of this stuff is the fact that it's the secret, right? It's not talked about. And when you want to talk about it, you sit in the room thinking about it. It's like, okay, how do I even bring this up? Like, this is not a conversation.
How do you, I can't just go in the room and say, like, y'all, I'm feeling like.
But I'm going to read
this.
Can I read this? I'm going to read this. Okay.
It says,
what's 1 Peter 5:5. Young people, in a similar way, place yourselves under the authority of spiritual leaders. Furthermore, all of you must serve each other with humility. That's that realness that we was talking about.
You need to authentication.
Because God opposes the arrogant but favors the humble. Be humbled by God's power so that when the right time comes, He will honor you. Turn all your anxiety over to God because He cares for you. Keep your mind clear and be alert. Your opponent, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion as he looks for someone to devour.
Come on.
And so I think that the issue here is, and it goes down even further. You talked about the fact that you're suffering, but all Christians suffer.
Yeah. Because
a part of the trick is the isolation piece, right? You feel like you're all by yourself.
Yes.
But as you started talking about this, you realize everybody's kind of thinking the same thing.
And I think definitely going through a lot of the same things as well. You know what I mean? Like even I have a girl best friend, I have a guy best friend, and even just sitting and talking to figure out that, my guy best friend has the same anxiety as me of, like, what is life going to be if we, I had anxiety about LadyT, let's talk about it, starting it off. And just know that we all have some of the same triggers, but, of course you deal with it different, you feel it different, but I definitely think, one of
the questions we have, do I say the name or what y'all?
We could let's do a media check. Right. Shout out.
I have Amina Latonia says, with depression, it may cause isolation. They may not have lots of friends. How do you encourage one's spouse to approach the topic if it's suspected?
That's big.
Yeah, that's pretty big. You first of all, you have to be yourself. You have to be yourself and approach it with no expectations. Sometimes we have expectations so high of how other people should feel about our situation that we get discouraged when it's confronted. So what you want to do is approach it with low expectations to your spouse. And I know that you have an issue, that you have a problem. Okay. Sometimes if there's no response for that, then we're going to bring it up, or you can call the counseling center where you can talk to someone about it. And also, too, you can go to mentalhealth.com. You can go to NIH to diagnose you. You can look up and find out what depression is all about. Sometimes the more informed we are, the less stress we have, the more that we can deal with it. So do those types of things. But with your spouse, just have no expectations, because a lot of people there's a big stigma on mental health. They may think that you're crazy or something like that, but just no expectations and let them know what's going on and everything, and then get help. And if you can't anything, call the counseling center, okay?
And I'll definitely post all of this information after the live video.
Can I add a little bit?
You can add it.
I always tell my teachers to start with the obvious. Ask them how they feel. Ask them if they think they got an issue, something's up. Because sometimes, as a spouse myself,
okay,
so proud.
Shout out, Schultz.
Hey, girl. I have been accused of failing, and it is very true. I jumped to 10, and she said, well, my goodness, I was just reading something that was sad. Calm down. You know what I'm saying? It could be, right. You could have a balance there. And so at least making sure that and all of those things, of course, that you suggested are great things, but you want to start with a conversation with, how are you feeling? I noticed this. Do you see this as a problem?
Yeah.
This don't quite seem like you doing okay to me. Mm-hmm. You used to do A, B, and C. Now you're just doing C. What happened?
And I think that can go for anybody, not just
that's right. That's true.
Right.
You could use that same technique in working with your children. Parents in your children. Before you let them go to school and feel that they're beautiful, gorgeous, intellectual, school administrators should be saving them. You should check in with the children. To see what is going on with them and having these same kinds of conversations. Well, you used to say A, B, and C all the time. You used to want to do this and go here. Whatever happened to this friend? What happened to this guy? What happened to this? You used to be talking to them a lot. They used to come around a lot. They don't come around. You know, being aware of what's going on with your child, and that's a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 20-year-old, whatever. Just being aware of what's going on and always having this conversation going, because, again, part of the trick is that people don't talk about what is really going on.
So the other thing too, is when it comes to children, adolescents, right, is language. Mm-hmm. You know, it's important that if you're talking to a child that you think is depressed, right, that you understand exactly what they are saying. One counselor talked to an adult, and when they was little, they saw a plane blow up, and so because of their age, they determined that it was a bird.
The child
thought it was a bird. Okay. So if as a child became an adult and everything, right, it became leery of birds. Uh-huh. But after counseling, you find out that it was a plane that was destroyed in the air and not a bird. So what I'm saying is that sometimes with children, you have to make sure that you're speaking the same language you understand. So you want to make sure that whatever depression or anxiety have, that you understand exactly what it is that they are trying to interpret to you.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
That's it. Yeah. And I think it all ties into talking about it.
Yes, it does.
And even with a lot of the hotlines and stuff that you gave, another one that I think is definitely important, and I think it's too big for us to really tackle today, but is the suicide hotline. And that number is 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-8255. And I think one thing that can be helpful is talking to somebody who doesn't know you from a can of paint. You know what I mean? So they can't judge you on it. They can't bring it up later, or, they don't hold it against you or hold it over your head or judge you when you have a good day that next day and then you go back down or something like that. Right.
Well, one of the ways, if a person is suicidal, one of the ways to know that a person is suicidal is if they have a plan. A lot of people talk about suicide, and even like in sickness, if a person get really sick and they can talk about suicidal, that's not necessarily bad, because they just want to try to get past the pain and so that's something different. But a person who has a plan that they are going out to the bridge and they're going to do this, and they tell you this, or they're going to go, they have a gun and has a plan of execution, that's when you should call somebody. You should call the suicide helpline. You should call the police or call a parent.
Okay, but what if they don't necessarily tell you about that stuff?
So if they had thoughts of suicide?
I mean, because I know, one of my experiences, It was a guy that I knew from high school, and for those who know me, he was a part of my bowling accident where it just went.
Lord have mercy.
Listen, how do you bust your chin, get a slight concussion, and fracture your finger from bowling?
Talent, raw talent.
I don't ever do anything little. But
what happened to the ball? I'm sorry.
To be honest, I was knocked out, so I don't know.
What happened to the ball? OMG.
Right. But so it was a very close friend that I had, and later he did unfortunately end up committing suicide. But from social media, you wouldn't be able to tell, or even and I think that goes with that persona of I'm okay, I'm good, I'm looking better than I actually am. Like, it's okay to have bad days, but with that, I didn't know, and I think that's one of the things that press me so much to talk to my friends now or ask those uncomfortable questions. And if I'm with the girls, we having wine, and like if I know a friend didn't get a job or something like that, like we going to talk about it anyways, because I never know what their triggers are. Just because with this generation, we don't show our emotions well. We don't do all of that well. And I think that's part of my goal with this broadcast, is to not only let people know that it's okay, but you have people to talk to, and let this start your conversation with your friends.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's why I came.
Yeah.
I wanted to come, and you talked to me about coming. I don't really, I like to be in the back most of the time, or at least in the
And he's always in the comments.
But I think that people do not realize, I think that parents in my line of work do not realize how many opportunities children have to be anxious, and how scary and genuinely aggressive the world is towards children. Even in schools, there are things that I have to do and things that I am required to allow that contribute to children's having a really tough time with being in the classroom. And teaching and education is a public service, and it is also a performance art. Some of our teachers in the classroom are not the most mentally healthy people, and they are working with children every day, all day, and some of their anxieties with the requirements that they have to do as far as testing and achievement and scores and all that stuff, some of that easily comes off on children, and people take for granted that children can feel what adults can feel. It's the same feeling. It's just the way that it's understood. You know what I'm saying? And the way that they bounce back from. The difference between adults and kids is kids can deal with something and bounce back much faster than an adult can, but it does not negate the fact that they've still had an experience.
And I think that goes to what you said first when you said, if adult has depression, they could lose their job, they could lose their spouse, they could do this. With a kid, they kind of act out, and then it's just like, oh, I made the basketball team. Let me, I'm okay now and stuff like that.
But parents have to know that this conversation, talking specifically about how you're feeling, what you are thinking in connection to the feelings that you have, this should be a part of the normal routine. Because as kids grow, their brains get bigger, their experiences get more and more vivid and more real. Yeah. And because there are so many places for people to be anonymous in our current society, and so many places for people to not be real with social media, with all the things that people can get involved in which they never really have to have authentic engagements. Yeah. It is up to you as a parent, and it is a part of your role as a parent, to make sure that your child has the ability to check in with somebody and develop their authentic self.
And I want to
be aware of that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what I want to say, and what Tanya said, talk to somebody. I talk to so many millennials who have depression, who have anxiety, who are better people now. And it's not because of anything I've done, but the research and just a matter of them talking to somebody about it. They've been held in. Right. They've been held in so long, and the pressure is so tight. You mentioned tight. The cloud is so tight. The fact that they can get it out, because sometimes you can't always get it out to parents. Sometimes you need
That's
a
true.
counselor. Sometimes you need a friend.
Mhm.
Somebody you need a teacher. All I say is somebody that you feel safe with, and talk to that person.
And I think one thing that, and I guess it's in the future when your kids get a little older, but I think one thing that I, as a big sister, as a mentor over some of the girls that I'm kind of over, some of the teens, you know, what you said earlier about, you know, parents, because I know parents say a lot of the times, oh, you know, Tan, thank you for being in their life. If, you know, if they can't talk to me, I want them to be able to talk to somebody.
Right.
But some of the stuff that they go through is just like, I can't change it, help it, mold it, fix it if you're okay with how your child is growing up. You know what I mean?
Right.
What Mr. Reggie was talking about, how a lot of kids or millennials, whoever, run to sex or drugs or alcohol and stuff like that. If I'm trying to tell you, like, all right, don't do this because it's going to take you down a whole other path that you're not ready for because of this one feeling, this one emotion, this one event. But if your parents know and they cool with it, it's just like,
that doesn't help you.
As a, you know, I don't want to say extra, as the village, how do you?
You can't combat the parent. Your role as the village is to help the parents, but parents need you to be courageous. Right. Parenting is not for cowards. Quote Bishop Eugene Reeves. Amen.
That's right. There's a question that came up with Deshaun Clater. It says social media has people living a false persona, and which is
and I think
true.
That's good and bad.
Well, the reason social media can do that, because when you go to social media, you can type anything you want to type in, say anything you want, and everything.
Edit pictures.
You can do all that thing, right?
Okay.
And,
10 pounds light.
And sometimes there's not even no rejection.
Right.
And so we feel as though we can do anything and everything we can do on it, right? But then that leads to problems as bullying, and that happens on the media, whether in church or not in church, and everything. The Bible talks about how to lay away every weight and sin.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to lay some of these weights away and talk to somebody. You know, a lot of times I see on social media that people, you can tell from their conversation that they're having problems with depression and anxiety, and they need to talk to somebody, get help, call that counseling center and get help. Because even with depression, just educating yourself about depression, there are 7 types of depression. There are 4 types of anxiety disorders. So knowing what type that you have, is important, so you can learn about it, educate yourself, start doing the exercise, start doing the mood music, start doing yoga or exercise.
Yoga ain't for punks.
And then there's medication, the different medications that you can take for depression and anxiety.
Okay. And we'll get into kind of the tools to manage anxiety and depression and stuff like that. But checking in some of the comments, from a millennial's perspective, I totally agree with you, Mr. Sean, about social media has you living a false life, because essentially it's a good thing, because, you know, I can post my best life on social media. Like, despite what I'm feeling, let me post this so this can be a positive light. It goes full circle back to what you were talking about putting out your best self, because essentially you want to get back to that best self. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it also is a trigger in a way, because, you know, if I see 3, 4, 5 of my peers who just got houses or cars, or, you know, like I said, because mine is emotional, maybe somebody's getting married and it's just kind of like in your face in a way. It's a trigger, but then it's, you know, it's a good and a bad
My
situation.
thing with social media is the fact
but you don't know how somebody got to that point.
Right. But in addition to that, when I talk about being authentic, the way that you respond to the world and the way that you respond to things on social media are not the same. Like, example, somebody posts rest in peace to somebody, and you got 69 likes.
Right.
Is it just me, or is it strange? I don't feel like I should like this post. Like, that's not an authentic interaction to like it or even to wow or even love it or whatever. Because when people post real things or post things that are possibly a little more personal than not, you only got these 4 or 5 options to respond. Which after time,
they need more emotions on
you be thinking it's like you're not even able to, those people who do post the real stuff or are a bit more authentic, you're still limited in your authenticity and how you engage with the world because your social media limits you to these things because it was not built for these kinds of things. You know what I'm saying? I just think that that's another layer of the difficulty with social media. And when you talk about kids and building their habits of communication and things, they are thinking in these terms.
But Jocelyn, I heard I saw a post where a young man said, "God, I hate you for taking my grandmother." What do you think about that?
And everybody just liked it? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was the post. God. So was he talking to social media or was he talking to God?
And that's when you get into how we're
it is Pastor Reed. Did somebody flagging for the church? Somebody should have
but that would be, it sounds like
screenshot.
But that was a cry.
And that's
that was a cry for help.
That was a cry for help.
But that's a part of, like I said, especially the village, because I know a lot of parents aren't on social media because that's not their thing yet.
Right.
But when, and like I said, growing up, when social media was coming to be as big as it is and stuff like that, my mom would kill me about posting emotions or feelings or stuff like that, saying, just anything that's not your best life
because
on
this
social
is for the
media.
world to see.
Right.
And that's
so essentially, she's kind of molded me to only post my best life.
Right.
What you're not going to do is blame your mom. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that.
Well, that's a whole other LadyT. Let's talk about it.
Justin Reed,
yeah, right.
We have to stop and acknowledge him.
Yes.
He's just phenomenal.
Yes.
He launched yesterday.
He
did. JR Consulting.
And I did that with live too.
Absolutely. He's our currently sleepy producer. Okay.
Producer.
All right. So Justin says, how do you suggest handling anxiety in a Black Christian context when typically it's ignored in the Black church or told to just pray it away?
A lot of people tell the millennial generation to just pray. Listen, I'm telling you, my letters to the Lord hardly get up there talking about praying about my issues.
But it is so. Prayer is what is prayer? What is prayer? What is prayer? What is prayer? Prayer is communication.
Communication.
Prayer is talking. Mm-hmm. What do we say? We're talking about it, right?
We do. We start our prayer talking about.
I'm not going to say that the church is wrong and they shouldn't say pray about it. Mm-hmm. What I will say is prayer does not only look one way. Prayer is not just on your knees. Right. And the prayer is also, hey, can you agree with me? Mm-hmm. And let's pray this out loud together and then have a follow-up conversation about it. So it's not that it's wrong to pray about it, but it's not, prayer does not just mean get your pillow, get on the floor, lay prostrate alone. Prayer means pray out loud, talk to somebody, communicate with somebody about what you're going through. Communicate with God, of course, but add somebody to the circle.
And I think that's a matter of having, and this is a whole nother conversation, but having people that you trust to be vulnerable enough around. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when you were talking about being in the church and connecting with that person, you have to be able to trust that person. That person has to be able to handle what you're going through. Right. And like I said, I can speak for the millennial generation. We are, wow. Oh, there's a lot going on back here.
Well, Tangela, the other thing I want to say, right, is with the Black community, they got faith confused with fear. They say they have faith, but actually the reason they don't go to the doctor or the counselor is because of fear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not faith, but it's fear.
Yeah.
Fear of the unknown. It was amazing. My wife had cancer years back, that some of the ladies wouldn't go to the hospital because they felt it was contagious.
They felt that cancer was
contagious. Oh, wow. Right. And you still people called still in the Black community. Some people call it the thing. That you're touched, right? All these little things we still have in the Black community. And if we educate, like I said, if we educate ourselves and find out more about it, right, that mental illness can be cured. Mental illness is we have some of it every day, just being human. You know, it's hard growing up in life, and you're gonna have anxiety, you're gonna have depression, right? But like I said before, right, when it becomes clinical or problems, how you respond in your anxiety, how you respond in depression. And with depression and anxiety, it can lead to suicide. It can lead to hurting others. It can physical harm people, right? Physical, emotionally, you can hurt other people if you're not taken care of.
And I think, especially everything you were saying about being educated about it, that point of time where I did talk to my mom in college about all that I was going through and, you know, the feelings that I was having and the emotions and all that kind of stuff, even knowing that, and it did usually happen. There are some things that can knock me off my game during the year, but just to know that during the winter season, a lot of people, teens, whoever, do get depressed, and it's because of the, you know, that it's so dark outside, or it's just melancholy. Is that the word I want? I don't know if that's the word, but that's it's just, it's calm. And I know, you know, as I'm adulting, and in the real world, and
you only got about 2 more years to do this every time you do that.
Until I'm 30, I'm adulting.
I'm gonna need you to let that go.
I'm on the bridge.
I thought she was clawing her way up in society.
I know you don't do this when you pay them bills. I bet you better pay them. I know
she actually. Sometimes I skip one. But don't tell my accountant.
Okay.
But you know, like I said, now figuring out, because I have less exciting things going on in the way. Like when you're in college, you got the parties, you got the everything that keeps you, you know, keeps your emotion up. I'm on go. And now, like I said, in the adult world where you go to work every day, and I'm in retail, so I'm there every day. But, you know, just to see how weather plays a part in my emotions and the way I go about my day and stuff like that. Because I'm telling you, when we hit them 70s, LadyT comes out, and it's just, you know, it's the whole, okay, LadyT is living her best life in person.
When you talk about anxiety and depression and fear, and I'm gonna do some study. I'm committing to it.
Commit to it. Yes,
I'm wondering if in the Bible, whenever you talk about fear, anxiety, all of these emotions, it immediately faith is the connection, right? So, is it possible that fear and anxiety are the antithesis or the opposite of faith, or the, you know what I'm saying,
and then a follow-up question:
what is the connection between those things? Because that's the difficulty that as Christians.
Well, the Bible talks about anxiety. It says, "Be anxious for nothing."
So, question for the
another hand. What's the rest of it?
Let me get that scripture.
Okay, find it. We're looking for scriptures.
That's the service I want to go to. Find it.
That is.
Let me ask
to Philippians 4:6-7.
That's it.
It says, "Be anxious for nothing."
The whole room, guys. Backstage.
Philippians.
All my peoples are trying to find this scripture.
What is
Philippians 4:6-7. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything be prayer, supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and mind through Jesus Christ. So we talk about the mind.
How do you make a request known? How do you do that? You got to do what?
You got
to pray, communicate.
You got to do what? Say.
You got to pray.
You got to pray, which is what?
Talking.
Talk about it. That's what I want. You got to talk about it.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
Okay. Wait.
That's it.
We got Pastor Ron chiming in.
Tell us, Rachel, I read 1 Peter 5:7. I read that first. I read that a while ago.
Okay. No. Listen, he be giving us.
We're getting scripture.
We are. So we have Philippians 4:6. We also read 1 Peter 5:7.
First Peter 5:7.
Right. Prayer, said Miss Shayna Lockhart. Okay. But
5:7.
Yes.
Who don't believe in the God we know?
Turn all your anxiety over to God because He cares for you.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your mind clear and be alert. Your opponent, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion as he looks for someone to devour.
An isolated and idle mind is the devil's playground. Okay? You hear that, Pastor Ron? I got it. I've been listening. But follow-up question to this, with anxiety that leads or that can lead to depression and suicide thoughts and stuff like that, does that make you a bad Christian? Because essentially, like I said before, like mine is the unknown. Like my triggers are the unknown or emotional and stuff like that. Does my fear, because it does say in the Bible, I talked about this recently, that God didn't give us the spirit of fear, but of love and a sound mind. Okay? And I know I have to keep saying that.
Come on, LadyT! Come on!
Okay, put me on somebody's.
Oh!
Don't put me on nobody's mission. But, does that, for the spiritual aspect of it, the religion aspect of it, does that make you a bad Christian? Because you're fearful and essentially, I mean, because I got faith of a mustard seed, but sometimes that fear is, it'd be like, it's like
eat up your feet.
I know it's fasting, so we gotta.
I've been there, child. I've been there. I know that.
It's like Pac-Man.
It said the Bible talks about actually, because the Bible says, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." It says, "Be," in other words, continue. Mm-hmm. And we know that we're supposed to sanctify. Talks about sanctifying. So it's a daily process, and that's what I like about counseling and everything. Counseling is process, and the Bible talk about processes. So we have to understand that we have a perfect God. We live in an imperfect world, an imperfect world, and we are imperfect. But if we just put our trust in God and pray and talk to God, He'll help us to make us better.
Yeah.
And what we do. And imagine there is a scripture, right, that helps us out here. It's Philippians 4:8. The Apostle Paul said, "Finally, my brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things, and the God of peace be with you," right? A lot of times what we think about every day develops us. It develops us bad, and it can develop us good.
Right.
So we have to start thinking about good things and great things, and not what grandmama told you how bad and you'll never be nothing, or those negative things, right? One of the things in talk therapy is positive talk, positive. And the Bible is all positive, right? It tells us about negative situations, but how to come out positive.
And I think also about positivity, and especially, I mean, and I don't want to keep saying the millennial generation because I don't want to,
it's okay.
Put out the, over 30, 35 people. Because no.
That face when you say that.
Because I don't know. No, for real. I think millennials are like 1980s something.
Really?
And that's like
80s.
Yes. So they're not the millennial
the
generation.
60s? That wasn't so bad.
Y'all the baby boomers.
Nah.
Just a lot of y'all.
Okay.
But with the millennial generation, especially, and those under the millennial generation, Generation X or Y, something like that. They're not as.
The point.
Point is, surrounding yourself with positive people, surrounding yourself with people who you want to be like, who they may have depression as well, but they're pressing out of that, or having, like I said, surrounding yourself with like minds, evenly yoked people, because it's one thing to be depressed and have anxiety, and you're around other depressed, anxiety people who just have they don't want to move. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that's a downfall to this generation in a way. Like, you can't take everybody with you. Like, at some point, somebody got to be dropped. You got to start dropping them because they can essentially hold you down. So And also with the music that we listen to. When you were talking about some of the signs that you see that somebody is depressed or is going through something or something like that, it wasn't recently, but usually in the showers where I listen to my music, I got the little home pod or whatever, and my mom had knocked on the door one day and she was like, "You good? What's going on? You want to talk about it?" I was like, "Talk about what?" She said, "You listen to the gospel." I change up what I listen to when I'm going through stuff. Like, even if it's not gospel, like just something uplifting.
Right.
Listening to Eric Thomas. He is an amazing motivational speaker. They call him the hip hop motivational speaker, or the hip hop motivational speaker. So if you have Apple Music, Spotify, anything like that, I would definitely check out his podcast and he's very relatable. So he had one talking about being in the pocket. So he's making sports references and stuff like that.
Right.
So just change up what you're listening to and who you're around and the stuff that you take in. You know what I mean?
Right. We often, I often use music therapy, and one of the songs I use is "I'm Good" by Tim Bowman, and it talks about some of the decisions he's made. He says that although I'm taking care of my kids, I've been through this in life, and through that, I'm good. Sometimes in life and being things that are bothering you, sometimes it's just making a decision. Making decisions. We decide to be angry. We decide, unless there's some kind of other extenuating circumstance, we decide to be angry. Anger, anxiety, depression, these are normal. These are normal things that happen in humans, right?
Right.
But how we react to those things, right, becomes the mental illness. Okay. And for those who just, because I'm a Christian counselor, one thing we don't want you to forget is Romans 10, 9 and 10. It says, "If you declare with your mouth Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe you are justified, and it's with your mouth that you profess faith and are saved." The answer, some of the answers to your questions, to what you go through every day, is having Jesus Christ in your life. Somebody to what? Talk to. Somebody to pray to.
Yes!
Amen and amen.
And if you are not saved yet, remember that there is somebody that you know that has gone through this. Everybody has experienced some level of anxiety, some level of this conversation at some point in their lives. And it will not be until you decide to step out and be courageous enough to talk about it with someone that, even if you talk about it and share it with someone who can't relate to it, they may direct you to somebody else. And if you get it out, you will be more inclined to feel better. That is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So, does anxiety and depression go away? That's one of the questions
it is curable. Okay, if you see a mental health professional, they will diagnose your situation, what type of depression you have, what type of anxiety they have, and then there are certain therapies that they can work with you on, whether it's cognitive behavior therapy, whether it's psychotherapy.
What's that? I like to be cuddling, close to cuddling.
But you can look those up on the internet, because this will take another 5 minutes.
It's close to
cognitive behavior therapy.
It's a cuddling.
No,
did you say cuddling?
No, cognitive.
Oh my God.
Behavior therapy, psychotherapy, right? But also too, some of the symptoms and signs: feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, loss of interest in daily activities, these are signs of depressions. Appetite or weight changes, sleep changes, loss of energy, anger, irritability, self-loathing, reckless behavior, concentration problems, unexplained aches and pains. Because one of the results of anxiety,
right now.
one of the results for anxiety and depression, right, is that it hurts it can come out within the body.
Yeah. So you talked earlier, and then I feel like this kind of will take us into it. What are the different types of anxiety and depression?
Okay, the different types of depression is you have You have SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder.
And that was like that weather one that I was talking about?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's seasonal.
Yeah. You depend on what the winter months, you know, the summer months like that. You have that, right? Then you have postpartum depression. You have bipolar disorder, situational depression. And then within that, you have like your major depression, and then some of the things that fall under those depressions. We won't get into that because it's our show, right? But those are the major ones.
Okay. And are there different types of anxiety?
And types of anxiety, you have social type of anxiety, panic disorder, and there's the third type, like do it.
You can't properly
generalized anxiety disorder. Yep.
Okay. All right, good stuff. I definitely feel like I learned some stuff with this. And we kind of put little tidbits in there and throughout the whole show. But what do I do if I'm currently in anxiety attack? Or like, because I know we talked about tools to manage kind of over time, and I know you said it's curable and stuff like that, but what do you do for the
if you have a panic attack, right? First you want to do is just realize that you just want to breathe, okay? Just breathe, just stretch yourself, breathe, focus on breathing, right? Focus on breathing. Get a glass of water. Focus on using your peripheral vision. Look side to side. Start moving around.
Okay.
And of course, try to get help.
And I know.
Start moving around. What do you mean?
Yoga. You said yoga. Yoga is a lot harder than the people think.
I know. I tried it.
Okay. Okay. My legs don't belong. It just don't belong.
Well, see, when the moving around is that you just got you kind of shot of adrenaline.
Endorphins.
Yeah. Well, you got shot of adrenaline, right? Because you're in a panic, right?
That makes sense.
And so you want to just try to move around to settle down.
Okay. And somebody in the comments said positive affirmations.
Yes.
Can definitely
yes.
Help. Talking to yourself. I know that's one thing my mom told me to do, to talk through it.
Yeah.
Like, if not somebody else at that moment in time, say, all right, I'm going to get through this. I can do this. Like, just talking to yourself. And I know that's what a lot of people who have social anxiety should do when they're in big crowds or when they're giving presentations and stuff like that. Just the positive affirmation to calm yourself down that you won't fail, because failure is part of anxiety as well. Just the fear of failure. So 2 F's that just should not be in our life, but they are.
They are.
Right. So is there anything you want to add to this amazing dialect?
Transparency,
dialogue,
authenticity, courageous conversation, people. You to get help, you gotta seek help. Seeking requires to make those requests to talk again. So what did I say? Authenticity, transparency. What was that?
Courageous.
Got
to be courageous.
That was intentional. I knew what it was. I was checking on y'all. I'm a teacher. Don't come for me.
Knowledge check. I got that.
Trying to check.
I got that.
I know what I'm doing.
I got what you gave. I took it and ran with it.
Right.
Listen, Reggie, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yes. You got to understand that mental health and wellness, it realizes the full potential of your life. It allows you to cope with your stressful life. It gets your work productivity, and it helps you to make meaningful contributions to your community. So that's the scope of mental health, to get you there. And that's all this professionals try to do, is get you to a better lifestyle, a better you, and a better you in your community.
Absolutely. And I definitely think with all of these tools given and just the dialogue that we had, I hope you all are better equipped to not only talk to your friends about it, talk to people about it. I hope it inspires you to be that ear, to be that outlet. Because it was nothing like when I was going through my stuff, and even if somebody can care enough about other people to just look and pay attention and care, or even, like I said, care about the different way you're carrying yourself.
Right.
Because when I came home from school, when I was going through my stuff, and somebody said, Tan, what's wrong? And I was like, no, I'm good. And then that second question of, Tan, you're not right. What's wrong? Like, you need that, especially with people who are going through depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all that kind of stuff. You need that second question. Because that first question is just like, all right, that's just it's normal. It's just like saying, hi, how are you? Right. You really don't care how they are. But that second one to really, like I said, push that person. And I'm telling you, I started bawling and I just let it all out. So, like I said, I hope this podcast, this live video inspires you to care about somebody. You know what I mean? Ask somebody how they are today. Ask somebody, do you want to talk? How you feel? How you feeling today? And mean it. You know what I mean? So that brings us to the end of the third LadyT. Let's talk about it. We're going to keep talking about some stuff.
Are we supposed to clap or something?
I mean, you want to clap? We
I was very good.
You were. Absolutely. We're going to have to bring him back.
Wonderful, son. Wonderful.
Thank you, Father.
That's that positive affirmation that we talked about.
Look, Josh.
Thank you. Oh, God.
He's crying. We're definitely going to have to bring these panelists back. I want to thank everybody who chimed in this time. Like, this was a little more serious topic. So, Miss Ivy, Miss Amina, Miss Deshawn, Miss Shayna, Pastor Ron, JR Consultant, okay?
Yeah.
Y'all got to have a squad that is doing some things. My squad doing things, okay? So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, everybody for participating. I cannot leave without thanking my panelists. Like I said, this is such a humbling experience when people actually want to be on the show.
Do we lead in for a selfie? Do we lead in?
Not yet. It's still a video.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We was ready.
Okay.
We talked about what we was going to do.
They did.
Right.
I
was going to give the high.
See, that's what happens when the millennials bring in the baby boomers.
I am not a baby boomer.
Where are you? You're in the middle.
Enough. I am in the
You are somebody.
I am.
You're awesome. You're awesome. Listen, that's the emotions. He's
getting counseling.
Okay. Right. Don't talk to your daddy.
Let us pray.
When two or more agree, okay? But that brings us to the end. Thank you for watching. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being here. Thank you for going on this journey with me. We are coming back in about 2 weeks. We're gonna talk about some more stuff in 2 weeks, okay? We're doing this a little more frequent because the demand is more frequent. You know what I mean? We got things to talk about.
Yes, we did.
So that is it.
Selfie.
Okay, we can end with a selfie. Oh, thank you. Thank you to D Lolo, my momager. That's who fingers you. I was kind of see trickle in. Oh, now it's her hair.
We out.
We not out. We still live on Facebook. Thank you, 50. Do you want to end? Yes, this live video. Selfie time.
Bye, everybody.